Alright, my name is Bryce Butler, and this is my video for Sprint 5. So, I'm just going to run the game. Right now it's in mute mode, so no sounds will play. So, as you can see, I got my centipede working. Instead of doing backward sending, where I send the moves to the next segment, I do forward looking, where it looks to see what the queue of the first one is and fills its queue based on that. And I have my HUD, and my HUD is completely dynamic, so when more digits are added, you can see that the lives for player 1 also move with it. And then the active high score in the middle also changes depending on if either of the players' current score is greater than the high score that is there. And so the same dynamicness of the text also works for player 2. So the lives will move to the left, and as more digits occur, it'll move left. Let me show you an example. So player 2 has a score of 1,000. Actually, that's the active high score, sorry. Wrong one. 1,000. It moves to the left, and the lives move with it. This high score is centered, so if I get multiple digits, it centers itself. Okay, so I have my score manager, which I didn't do during the last sprint. It's a singleton, and it records the player 1 score, player 2 score, and the active high score, and also keeps track of the active player. So all that's sent to it is a score, and it does its own housekeeping for the active player, and then changes the active high score if either score is higher. And then I tell the HUD Manager to that hey, the scores have changed. So then in the HUD Manager, it's also a singleton, and it has my font and the integer to keep track of how many lives, the 2 sprites that represent the lives icon, the glyphs, the starting pose, the position offset, and the string that represents the score. And then the methods are the update score, which I just showed you, and the init. So in the HUD Manager, it initializes all of these things, and so I have an init method, and the reason this is empty is because there needs to be an instance of the HUD Manager for the HUD to be displayed correctly. And since it's a singleton, I can't just call new HUD Manager open close parentheses for the default constructor in like the wave manager or whatever to have an instance of it. So I had to call any method to have it be initialized on the screen to work. I don't know if this is efficient or the right way to go, but I needed it to be a singleton so I can access it and stuff. So there's that. And then I have my fill glyphs, which fills the list with the text that is the score. And here is the active player 2 moving to the start position to the left when more digits are there, and this is the one for centering the active high score. And then when I update the scores, I set the strings to these new strings, and I clear my list of glyphs and I refill them. And then here I draw them, and then drawing the lives. What else did I do? So, my sound system. I have a base class sound system that has its constructor and destructor, and then pure virtual methods, play sound and stop sound, that are to be implemented in children classes. Then I have a method that returns my sound map. I'll explain that later. And then I have beating and not beating, a boolean. So the head segment is what plays the beat noise, and so if there's multiple head segments, I don't want multiple beat noises going and like reverb and all this crazy stuff that can happen. So my sound is a string sound map. So given a string key, I can play a sound from the sound map. So I have an initialized sound map, which initializes the entire sound map the first time a sound system is activated. So with the sound map, I had to manually set each one, but I only had to set it once, and then it would be set for good. The string has to be the resource key that I use. Well, I guess it doesn't have to be, but I did it that way just because. Why not? And so in my mute sound, I have the inherited methods that are completely empty. Also, I have a new constructor that takes to it the map, the sound map. So this is to prevent the sound map from being reinitialized every time I change from mute to non-mute to mute to non-mute, to save some CPU power and just copying rather than recomputing. And these are just empty methods. I was gonna do just not a strategy system where you would mute and then it would just change all of the volumes to 0, but it would be less efficient because you would still be playing the sound even though its volume is 0. So instead you just call an empty method. In the non-mute sound, it's basically the same as the mute sound, except you actually play the sound and stop the sound. Stopping the sound is stopping the looped sounds when an entity dies. And yeah, and then I have a sound manager class over here. That's a singleton, and it has a pointer to the sound system and a method toggle mute, and then 2 wrapper methods play sound and stop sound. So right now I have it initialized as a mute sound. I'll turn it off in a minute to show you that sound works. But so my toggle mute, I changed my boolean is mute, and so if it's mute, the system is now a mute system, else it's a non-mute system. And then play sound looks to see if it's beating, and if it's not beating, you can play the beat sound. And if the key isn't beat, then just play the sound because it's not a beat sound. And then the stop sound, you have to turn beating to false if it's beat. So kind of some housekeeping stuff there. So here it is with sound. So all the sound works, and all the scoring works, because I was showing you earlier. So like an example of both is the flea. So in the initialize, the sound manager plays the flea sound, and then in the destroy, it stops the sound because the flea sound is looping. And then with collision with the bullet, on the second hit, it adds the score, and then plays the kill sound for the enemy to be killed. The reason I don't have it in destroy is because, like collision with the blaster, you don't want to add score and you don't want to play the kill sound. So there's that. I think that's everything. I also went through and commented a lot of my code that I hadn't before. So like Blaster has a whole bunch of comments, and there's still a few things I haven't gotten to commenting yet, but that's about everything. Right, thanks.